What happens when beauty turns to betrayal and love is poisoned by greed? Chief Andy Nwokoye gave his young wife everything, but behind the walls of his mansion, she and her mother were weaving charms, isolating him, and plotting his death to steal his empire. Just when their trap was about to close, fate intervened, and the hunters became the hunted. Will Chief Andy survive their deadly scheme, or will the shadows of betrayal consume him? Watch till the very end to uncover the shocking truth. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more thrilling African stories. Chief Andy Nwokoye was a man who, by every visible measure, had conquered life. At 52, his name echoed in boardrooms, political gatherings, and even church harvests. He was one of the wealthiest men in Enugu State, owner of vast estates, a transport company that ran across Nigeria, and several fuel stations. His mansion on the hills of Independence layout was not just a house. It was a monument. The sprawling building rose like a king's palace, guarded by tall iron gates and lined with exotic flowers imported from Kenya. At night, the mansion glowed with golden lights, its fountains spraying arcs of water that glittered like diamonds under the moon. Every corner breathed wealth, order, and dignity, the reflection of the man who built it. And beside him, as society saw it, was a crown jewel, Amarachi, his wife of 5 years. She was a vision, a young woman in her early 30s with the kind of beauty that made conversations falter. Her skin shimmered like polished bronze. Her eyes were sharp and alluring, and her smile could disarm even the most suspicious onlooker. She dressed with elegance, lace gowns that hugged her figure, gold bracelets that jingled as she moved, perfumes that left trails of desire in her wake. Wherever Chief Andy appeared with her, whispers of admiration followed. "Our chief is blessed," people often said, but blessings can sometimes carry a poison beneath their sweetness. Behind the glimmer of Amarachi's eyes lurked ambition, and behind her smile was a hunger that could not be satisfied by wealth alone. In the silence of her bedroom, far from the ears of Chief Andy, she spoke into her phone late at night, her voice low and urgent. "Mama, I'm tired of him controlling everything. All the wealth, all the power, it is in his hands. If he dies today, I won't even have half of it. We must secure our future." Her mother, Mama Ifeoma, listened from her hut in the village. She was a short, stout woman in her 60s, with deep tribal marks etched across her cheeks. Her eyes were not the kind that softened with age. They were hard, like polished stones, always calculating, always piercing. She had lived a life of scarcity, raising her children through sheer cunning, and had grown infamous in the village as a woman who knew things. She could mix herbs that healed or harmed, whisper incantations that bent wills, and consult shrines to achieve her goals. To some, she was feared. To others, respected. To Amarachi, she was a weapon. "Mama," Amarachi continued, "I want you here. Come and live with me in Enugu. Chief will agree if I tell him I'm lonely. With you here, we can plan everything properly." Mama Ifeoma chuckled hoarsely, her voice crackling like dry firewood. "Good child. You know a bird cannot fly far without the wings of its mother. Prepare the room. I will come." When Amarachi presented the idea to Chief Andy, she played her part with expert precision. "Darling," she said one evening as they dined in the chandelier-lit dining hall, "I've been feeling lonely whenever you travel. The house is so big, and I have no real companion here. Please let Mama come and stay with us. She will help me and I will no longer feel so alone." Chief Andy looked at her with tender eyes. Though his hair had begun to gray, his heart still beat with the passion of a younger man. He adored his wife, doted on her, and had long stopped questioning her requests. He saw her as fragile, needing care, and himself as the protector who must never deny her peace. "If that will make you happy," he said, smiling warmly, "then let Mama come. This house is big enough for everyone. She is family, after all." Amarachi lowered her eyes demurely, hiding the triumphant glint within them. Within 2 weeks, Mama Afeoma arrived in Enugu. The mansion's maids carried in her numerous bags, bundles of wrappers, small pots, strange calabashes tied with cowries, and sacks that rattled with unknown contents. The mansion, which once smelled of imported air fresheners, soon carried undertones of burnt herbs and incense. At first, Chief Andy tried to welcome her warmly. He even introduced her proudly to his business associates during a weekend gathering. But soon, the rhythm of the house began to change. Strange things started happening at night. The guards swore they heard chanting drifting from the back of the compound around midnight. Smoke rose from the kitchen at odd hours, filling the air with acrid scents that stung the nostrils. Sometimes Chief Andy would wake drenched in sweat, his heart racing, haunted by dreams of shadows chasing him or of hands clawing at his throat. "Amara," he said one morning, his voice hoarse from a restless night, "why does your mother burn things in the kitchen at midnight?" "The smoke suffocates me." Amarachi feigned innocence, her expression calm. "Oh, Andy, Mama is old. She believes in her herbs. She says they cleanse the air. Please let her be. She only means well." Andy frowned, but said nothing more. He loved peace and hated conflict. But the changes deepened. He began to fall ill more often, headaches that throbbed like drums, sudden dizziness during board meetings, and a weakness in his limbs that doctors could not explain. Yet, whenever Amarachi served him food, she insisted on feeding him herself, her eyes following each swallow as though confirming that he consumed everything. When he mentioned inviting his brothers or sisters to visit, Amarachi's face would harden instantly. "Why must they come here?" she snapped one evening, her voice sharp. "Have you forgotten the quarrels they caused after your father's burial? Those people are jealous of you. They don't like me, Andy. Do you want them to come here and insult me in my own home? Or poison me?" Chief Andy hesitated, torn between loyalty to his family and his wife's accusations. Amarachi pressed harder, tears welling in her eyes. "Andy, if you love me, you will keep me safe. I am all alone here. My only comfort is Mama. Please, don't let anyone disturb our peace, blinded by affection." Chief Andy gave in. Slowly, his once bustling mansion turned into a fortress of isolation. His siblings stopped visiting, his nephews and nieces were turned away at the gates, and even his long-trusted business partners noticed his withdrawal. The house that once welcomed laughter and conversations became cold and silent, save for the whispered incantations of Mama Afeoma and the quiet, watchful eyes of Amarachi. In the servants' quarters, however, Ejike, Chief Andy's loyal nephew, began to grow uneasy. At 25, he had always looked up to his uncle as a father figure, for Andy had paid his school fees after his father's early death. Ejike often visited the mansion to help with errands or simply to spend time with his uncle. But lately, each time he arrived, he found the chief weaker, thinner, and quieter. The strong, confident man he knew seemed to be shrinking before his eyes. Amarachi, on the other hand, grew bolder, commanding the staff with an iron fist, and Mama Ifeoma stalked the halls like a queen mother. One evening, Ejike heard faint chanting as he passed near the kitchen. He paused, pressing his ear closer. The voice was unmistakably Mama Ifeoma's, low, rhythmic, calling names he could not recognize. When the chanting ceased, a pungent smoke drifted out. Ejike coughed, his heart pounding. Something was terribly wrong in this house. For Chief Andy, the walls of his mansion began to close in. He would sit alone in his massive sitting room, surrounded by leather couches and glass tables, yet feel the weight of loneliness pressing down on him. He often remembered his childhood in the village, where laughter filled the air as his brothers and sisters played under the mango trees. He thought of his mother's warm embrace, of his father's proud smile. Now, in his palatial mansion, with wealth at his fingertips, he was a prisoner of love, a prisoner of charms, a prisoner of fear. Every time he looked at Amarachi, she smiled sweetly, yet deep within he sensed a distance, a secret he could not touch. Every time Mama Ifeoma passed by, her eyes lingered on him as though measuring his strength, calculating his days. And in his heart a silent dread grew. The mansion that once stood as the symbol of his success had transformed into something else, something darker, a mansion of shadows. The mansion of Chief Andy Nwokoye had once been a place of elegance and freedom. Guests marveled at the marble floors, the chandeliers that sparkled like stars, the fountains that danced under moonlight. But as weeks turned to months after Mama Ifeoma's arrival, a new aura wrapped itself around the compound, a heaviness that even the servants whispered about in hushed tones. The change did not come suddenly. It began subtly, like the creeping of an unseen shadow. Mama Ifeoma would retreat into the kitchen at odd hours, always locking the door behind her. At first, the staff thought it was simply her old-fashioned cooking style. But soon they noticed she carried small clay pots and blackened gourds in and out, whispering to herself as though speaking to unseen companions. She forbade the maids from entering certain rooms. "Do not sweep that corner," she snapped at one. "Leave that shelf as it is," she warned another. The maids obeyed out of fear. Once, a young house girl ignored her and moved a small bundle of dried leaves tucked behind a curtain. By morning, the girl woke with rashes covering her entire body, itching and burning until she screamed for relief. Mama Ifeoma only laughed, muttering, "That is what happens when a child puts her hands where they should not." Beneath the manicured lawns of the mansion, she buried charms wrapped in red cloth, cowries, and feathers of strange birds. The guards sometimes spotted her in the moonlight, crouching like a hunter, digging holes and whispering incantations into the soil. No one dared question her, not even Chief Andy, for Amarachi always stood at her side, justifying every act. "Andy," Amarachi would say, her voice honey-sweet, "Mama is only protecting us. You don't understand these things. In this world, people are wicked. She wants to shield us from evil eyes." But the so-called protection was slowly breaking him down. Every plate of food that touched Andy's lips had first been whispered over by Mama Ifeoma. She would mutter words in a tongue older than memory, spitting into the soup or brushing her palm across the meat. Amarachi, ever dutiful, would then carry the tray to her husband with a smile, and Chief Andy, trusting, would eat. The effects were undeniable. The once energetic man, whose voice boomed in meetings and whose gait carried authority, began to fade. His shoulders drooped, his laughter, once hearty, became a mere echo. He coughed endlessly, his breath rattling like dry leaves in the wind. At times, he misplaced important documents, leaving contracts half signed or checks forgotten on his desk. Each time this happened, Amarachi mocked him. "Look at you," she would sneer, her eyes cold. "Is this the mighty Chief Andy Nwokoye everyone talks about? You cannot even keep your files in order. Sometimes I wonder if I married a man or an old child." When he tried to reach for her in the night, seeking the comfort of his wife, she turned her back. "I'm tired," she said again and again, her voice edged with irritation. Days turned into weeks without intimacy, and Andy's spirit sank deeper into despair. The mansion no longer belonged to him. It was Amarachi's stage, Mama Ifeoma's shrine, and he, the once proud lion, had been reduced to a caged animal, pacing silently in a prison of his own wealth. But not everyone was blind to what was happening. Ejike, his nephew, still visited whenever he could. At 25, Ejike carried the vigor of youth, but also the sharpness of a man molded by hardship. His father, Andy's elder brother, had died when Ejike was only a boy. Chief Andy had stepped in, paying his school fees, guiding him through university. To Ejike, his uncle was more than family. He was a savior. That was why each visit troubled him. The uncle he knew had been strong, commanding, his eyes alive with vision. But now, when Ejike entered the mansion, he was greeted by a pale figure slumped on a chair. Andy's once broad shoulders sagged, his cheeks hollowed, his eyes sunken and ringed with shadows. His voice was faint, his laughter forced. "Uncle," Ejike would say, forcing a smile, "you are working too hard." "You need rest," Andy only nodded, sipping slowly from whatever cup Amarachi placed before him. Whenever Ejike tried to stay longer, to spend the night in the mansion and watch over his uncle, Amarachi quickly intervened. "This is a private home, Ejike," she would say curtly, her beautiful face twisted with irritation. "You cannot just impose yourself here. Your uncle needs peace, not noise from young men like you." "But, Auntie," Ejike protested once, "I only want to help." "Uncle doesn't look well," she snapped back, "and who told you he isn't fine? Are you a doctor now? Leave when you're done visiting. This is not a lodge." Her words cut deep, but Ejike endured. For his uncle's sake, he kept coming, even if Amarachi's coldness made each visit a battle. The truth revealed itself one fateful evening. Ejike had arrived late, just as the sun dipped behind the hills. The mansion was quiet, too quiet. Amarachi had gone upstairs, and Chief Andy was asleep on a couch in the sitting room, his chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Mama Ifeoma, however, had disappeared into the storeroom at the back of the house. Curious, Ejike lingered in the corridor. He pressed his ear against the wooden door. From inside came a voice, low, harsh, rhythmic. Mama Ifeoma's voice. "Aniga emeyaka anu, aniga emeyaka anu. We will make him like meat. We will make him like meat." Her words slithered into the silence like snakes. Ejike's heart pounded as he listened. The voice grew sharper, rising into a chant that seemed to summon forces beyond human understanding. He could hear the clatter of cowries being tossed, the rattling of gourds, and a sharp hiss as though something burned in a pot. "Onwu gai soya, aku yaga abun ke ani." Death will follow him, his wealth will be ours. Ejike's blood ran cold. He stepped back, his palms sweating. There was no longer any doubt. His uncle was under a spell, trapped in a net, woven by Amarachi and her mother. That night, Ejike could not sleep. He lay awake in his small apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying the words he had heard. Fear gnawed at him, but beneath the fear was determination. He could not allow his uncle to be destroyed by the very woman who was supposed to love him. Meanwhile, inside the mansion, Chief Andy's suffering deepened. At dinner, Amarachi mocked him openly. When he coughed violently, spilling water down his shirt, she laughed bitterly. "Shame," she muttered, shaking her head. "How did I end up with a man who behaves like a sick old beggar? If only people knew what you've become behind closed doors." Mama Ifeoma chuckled, adding fuel. "A man who cannot command his own strength has no right to command a household. Leave him, Amara. Such men only drag women down." Chief Andy lowered his head, tears burning his eyes. He had built empires, fed families, uplifted communities, but within his own home he was reduced to nothing. The mansion, once a palace of pride, was now a house of torment. Every corridor held whispers, every corner hid charms, and every meal carried poison, disguised as love. Amarachi and Mama Ifeoma walked with confidence, ruling over the compound like queens of a conquered land. But beyond the gates, in the heart of Ejike, a fire had been lit. He had seen enough. He knew his uncle's decline was not natural, and though fear gnawed at him, he resolved that he would not watch silently. Somewhere, somehow, he would find a way to break the grip of mother and daughter. The battle for Chief Andy's soul had begun. Chief Andy Nwokoye's decline had reached a point where even casual visitors whispered among themselves after leaving the mansion. Once he had been a towering figure in business and society, but now he shuffled through the grand halls with the frailty of a man twice his age. His suits hung loosely on his shrinking frame, his face was hollow, and his voice, once commanding, was little more than a strained murmur. Amarachi and her mother, Mama Ifeoma, watched with satisfaction, but in their eyes the slow decay was no longer enough. They were restless, impatient. The charms had weakened him, yes, but his fortune remained locked in his control. His signature was still required for the biggest transfers. His name was still etched on every title deed, every document, every bank account. It was time to finish what they had started. Amarachi sat with Mama Ifeoma late one night in the master bedroom. The air was heavy with the scent of burning incense. The only light came from the flicker of a red candle placed in a small clay pot between them. "Mama," Amarachi whispered, her eyes glinting with greed and urgency. "He is holding on longer than we expected. Every day he still breathes is a day wasted. If we wait too long, something may expose us." Mama Ifeoma adjusted her wrapper, her tribal-marked face glowing eerily in the candlelight. "You are right, my daughter. A hunter does not wound a lion and then watch it limp away. He must finish the kill." Amarachi leaned closer. "Then what do? We cannot just strike carelessly. It must look natural. If the doctors suspect foul play, we are finished." A slow, crooked smile stretched across Mama Ifeoma's face. "There is a man, a native doctor at the edge of the town. They call him Dibia Ukwu, the great seer. He has potions that do not leave a trace, just one drop, and the heart stops as though from sickness. By the time they call doctors, it will be too late." Amarachi exhaled sharply, relief mingled with excitement. "Then we must see him." The next evening, under the guise of visiting a women's fellowship meeting, Amarachi and her mother slipped out of the mansion in a discreet car. They drove beyond the glittering lights of Enugu into the rural outskirts where the roads narrowed and bush paths swallowed the city's glamour. At the end of a long dirt road stood a crooked hut, its walls darkened by smoke, its roof patched with rusted sheets. Strange symbols were carved on the wooden door, and skulls of goats hung from the eaves. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of blood, palm oil, and dried herbs. The native doctor, Dibia Ukwu, sat cross-legged on a mat, his chest bare, his skin glistening with oil. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair matted with cowries, and around his neck hung strings of bones. He looked at them without greeting. "I know why you are here." His voice was gravelly, deep, as though echoing from beneath the earth. Amarachi and Mama Ifeoma knelt respectfully. "We need him gone," Mama Ifeoma said bluntly. Dibia Ukwu reached into a calabash and drew out a small clay vial sealed with black wax. "This is death in liquid form. Pour it into his evening wine. He will drink, and within minutes his heart will betray him. The doctors will say it was sickness, nothing more." Amarachi reached eagerly for the vial, but the Dibia pulled it back. "Remember, this is no ordinary poison. Use it only once, and on that night the spirits will feast. If you waste it, there will be no second chance." They paid him heavily, in cash, in gold bangles, even in promises of more after the deed. With the vial safely hidden in Amarachi's handbag, they returned to the mansion, their hearts pounding with anticipation. The plan was set for the following week. On the night, Chief Andy was to return from a rare late board meeting in town. Exhausted from business, he would not suspect anything unusual about being served a glass of wine to relax. That evening, the mansion was unnaturally quiet. The maids had been dismissed early, told to retire to their quarters. The guards remained outside, unaware of the storm brewing inside. In the dining room, the chandeliers glowed dimly, casting long shadows across the polished marble floor. The dining table was set, though only one plate lay at its center. A half-empty bottle of imported red wine stood waiting, along with 2 crystal glasses. Amarachi paced the room, her palms sweaty despite her calm exterior. Mama Ifeoma sat in the corner, her voice low as she muttered incantations, calling unseen spirits to cloak their act in silence. At last, the sound of the main gate opening signaled Chief Andy's return. Moments later, the heavy door swung open, and he entered, tired, shoulders slumped, briefcase in hand. "Amara," he sighed, his voice weary, "it was a long meeting." "I am drained." Amarachi's lips curved into a smile. "Don't worry, my love. Sit down. I have prepared something to help you relax." He lowered himself into the chair, loosening his tie. The man was a shadow of his former self, and yet, in his weakness, Amarachi only saw opportunity. She picked up the wine bottle, pouring 2 glasses. Then, with a swift, practiced motion, she uncorked the clay vial hidden beneath the table. The liquid inside was thick, black, and pungent. She tilted it carefully, letting a few drops slip into his glass. They dissolved instantly, leaving no trace. Mama Ifeoma's chanting grew louder, her voice weaving through the air like a spell. "Onwu ga abia, aku ga abunke ani." Death will come, the wealth will be ours. But fate had written another script. In the servants' quarters, Ejike had refused to leave that night. Amarachi's hostility had grown too sharp, her eyes too cold. Something told him this night was different. He hid himself quietly, watching the mansion's lights from a distance. When he saw the silhouette of Amarachi in the dining room, pouring wine with deliberate care, and Mama Ifeoma chanting beside her, he knew His fears were justified. Moving stealthily, Ejike crept through the back corridor until he found a cracked door that gave him a clear view of the dining room. His heart pounded as he saw Amarachi slide the vial back into her gown and Chief Andy reach for the glass. No! The word tore from Ejike's throat before he could stop himself. He burst into the dining room, his footsteps echoing across the marble. "Uncle, don't drink it!" he shouted. Startled, Chief Andy froze, the glass inches from his lips. Amarachi's eyes widened in panic. In desperation, she lunged at him, trying to force the glass into his mouth. "Drink it, Andy." "It will calm you," she cried, her voice trembling with rage. At the same time, Mama Ifeoma shrieked, her hands raised as though to summon some dark force to aid her. But Ejike was quicker. He dashed forward, knocking the glass from Andy's hand. It fell to the marble floor, shattering into 100 pieces. The poisoned wine splashed across the tiles. Where it touched, the stone hissed and smoked as though acid had been spilled. All three froze. Chief Andy's eyes widened, horror dawning on his face. He looked from the smoking floor to his wife, then to her mother, and finally to Ejike. His voice trembled. "Amara, what have you done?" Amarachi screamed, her mask shattered. She clawed at Ejike, her nails raking across his arm. "You ruined everything!" she shrieked, her voice wild. Mama Ifeoma roared like a wounded beast, spitting curses. "You meddling boy! May your eyes go blind, may your tongue rot in your mouth." Chief Andy staggered to his feet, his heart pounding as the truth crystallized. All the sickness, all the weakness, it had not been fate or nature, it had been them, the women he trusted most. Guards, alerted by the noise, rushed in, their boots thudding against the floor. They froze at the sight. Amarachi screaming, Ejike restraining her, Mama Ifeoma hissing like a cornered snake, and the floor still sizzling where the poisoned wine had spilled. "What is happening here?" one guard demanded. Chief Andy's voice broke as he pointed at his wife and her mother. "They tried to kill me with poison. My own wife, her mother." The room fell into stunned silence. For Amarachi and Mama Ifeoma, the carefully spun web of deceit had unraveled in one catastrophic moment. What was meant to be the night of their triumph had become the night of their downfall, and Chief Andy Nwokoye, once a shadow of himself, now stood with clarity in his eyes, staring at the women who had sought to bury him alive. The plot to seize his life and wealth had been exposed, but the battle was not over. For in the wake of betrayal, only destruction could follow. The guards, alarmed by Ejike's shout and the commotion, stormed in. 4 tall men in black suits surrounded the scene, their confusion giving way to action as they pinned Amarachi's flailing arms and forced Mama Ifeoma onto her knees. Amarachi screamed, thrashing, "Leave me! Don't touch me! He belongs to me! All of this belongs to me!" Her voice echoed with madness. Mama Ifeoma spat on the floor, her spit dark like something unnatural. She glared at Ejike with venom. "You foolish boy! The spirits will crush you. You dare fight against me? You will not see the end of this moon." Ejike stood firm, panting from the struggle. His heart pounded in his chest, but his courage did not waver. He moved quickly to his uncle's side, holding him steady. "Uncle, it's over. You're safe now. Their charms won't hold you any more." Chief Andy collapsed into a chair, burying his face in his palms. His whole body trembled. The betrayal cut deeper than any blade. For months, he had blamed himself for weakness, believing sickness was natural. But now He saw clearly. The woman he loved and her mother had planned to end him. Word traveled faster than the harmattan wind. By dawn, whispers had reached every corner of Enugu. Chief Andy's wife tried to poison him. She and her mother were caught. By mid-morning, the compound was flooded. Relatives, villagers, priests, and elders poured in. Some wept openly at the sight of Chief Andy's frail state. Others spat on the ground when they looked at Amarachi, who sat bound, her once elegant gown torn and her hair disheveled. The mansion itself seemed to breathe differently. For months its corridors had been cloaked in shadows, perfumed with the smoke of strange herbs. But now priests in white cassocks moved room to room, chanting psalms, sprinkling holy water, lighting candles. They opened locked chambers and found buried pots of charms, calabashes filled with dark liquids, effigies stuffed with feathers and nails, clay bowls smeared with blood. The air was heavy with shock. Maids who had long suspected something sinister wept in relief as the priests smashed the charms one by one. "We told ourselves it was imagination," one whispered, "but truly this house was caged." By the third day, Chief Andy's entire extended family gathered. Brothers, sisters, cousins, people Amarachi had successfully kept away, now filled the mansion. Their faces hardened as the truth came to light. "How could you?" One of Andy's elder brothers spat at Amarachi. "You locked us out while you tried to bury him alive in charms." Amarachi, chained at the wrists, sneered through swollen lips. "You were all jealous. You wanted his money, his power. I was protecting him from you." Her words fell on deaf ears. Nobody believed her anymore. Mama Ifeoma, however, remained defiant. She sat cross-legged on the floor of the courtyard, glaring at everyone. "You people think you've won? This is not the end. The spirits I serve will not forgive this insult." She began to chant, but one of the priests silenced her with a loud recitation of the Psalms. The sound of the holy word seemed to pierce her, and for the first time a flicker of fear flashed in her eyes. The community spat on their names. Women hissed when they passed. Men pointed fingers of scorn. "Wife of darkness," they called Amarachi. "Daughter of poison," they mocked Mama Ifeoma. The once glamorous Amarachi, who used to glide through town in jeweled heels and expensive lace, now sat in shame, her beauty stained with evil. Weeks later, the case reached the courts. The trial drew crowds so large that police had to control them. People wanted to see the faces of the women who had almost succeeded in killing one of the most respected men in Enugu. The evidence was overwhelming. Ejike testified in a steady voice, recounting the night he saw Amarachi lace the wine and Mama Ifeoma chant over it. The maids came forward, describing the late-night rituals, the forbidding of certain rooms, the strange instructions never to question anything. Priests testified about the charms found hidden in the house. The judge, an elderly man with stern eyes, listened quietly before passing judgment. Amarachi wept uncontrollably, her mascara staining her face as she begged, "Please, my lord, forgive me. I was misled. I was desperate. I loved my husband. I swear it was confusion." Mama Ifeoma, on the other hand, stood unrepentant. Her chin jutted out proudly as she hissed, "The spirits will fight you for this judgment. You may cage my body, but not my soul." The judge's gavel came down hard. "Amarachi Nwokoye and Ifeoma Nwankwo, you are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment for attempted murder, conspiracy, and the use of diabolical means to cause harm." Gasps filled the courtroom. Some sighed with relief, others with satisfaction. Justice had been served. Back at the mansion, life slowly returned. The thick air of fear lifted. Doors that had remained shut were opened wide, windows thrown open to let in sunlight. The priests completed their cleansing, declaring the home free of diabolical influence. Chief Andy began to recover, though his health remained fragile for months. Each morning he would sit by the balcony, staring at the gardens, his mind heavy with memories of betrayal. Ejike became his shadow, loyal, steadfast, always present. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the skies with orange flames, Chief Andy called him close. His voice was soft but firm. "Ejike, you did not just save my life. You saved my soul. I might have died not knowing the truth. I might have been buried with lies." He clasped the young man's hands, tears filling his eyes. "From today you are not just my nephew. You are my son." Ejike's throat tightened. He knelt, overwhelmed. "Uncle, I only did what was right." The truth could not die in silence. The mansion, once a prison, became a house of freedom again. Laughter returned to its corridors. Family members visited freely. Children played in the gardens. And for the first time in years, Chief Andy felt surrounded by love that was genuine, not poisoned by manipulation. But even as joy returned, the walls seemed to whisper reminders of the past. Sometimes when the wind blew, it carried faint echoes of Amarachi's screams or Mama Ifeoma's chants. The scars of betrayal would never completely fade. Yet Chief Andy knew one truth that anchored him. Evil could be strong, but it never triumphed over truth forever. And so the story of Amarachi and her mother became a cautionary tale across the land. People spoke of it at gatherings. Mothers warned their daughters, and fathers reminded their sons. Greed and charms may build an empire, but they will never sustain it. Betrayal may cut deep, but truth always rises in the end. The mansion stood tall as a living testimony, not of wealth, but of survival, faith, and justice.